Hi, friends. Welcome to Sybil's Lab of Cartomantics. I'm Amelia,
I'm Danielle.
and we are talking about the Celtic Cross today. Danielle, tell us why we're doing this. What's going on?
Why are we doing this? Amelia and I have mentioned more than once our resistance to doing spreads in general. Like we're kind of more free-flowing readers. We fancy ourselves that way anyway. And that neither one of us have been big believers in or practitioners of the Celtic Cross. And yet, I'm sure you people watching know, as we know, that this is the spread that's referenced in all the little white books and all of the big books. This is the classic one. This is the mention. And it can become kind of a monster. So, since it's something that we dismissed, we thought, let's get out, let's lay 10 cards out, let's practice the spread and really experiment and test our sort of attitude that the Celtic Cross is not for us. So we gave it a shot and we'll see how that turned out when we share it with
I think
you.
it's like, yeah, no, I have so many thoughts. Like,
Same. You guys, it was a journey. So first, before we really get started, I'm going to share the assignment. If you have looked into the Celtic Cross, you know that there are lots of versions of this. They all tend to look the same, like they are mapped in the same way, but the positions tend to be named just slightly differently. So first, we needed to make sure that when we laid our Celtic crosses separately at home and did our interpretations, that we were using the same spread. And because we both like Labyrinthos, the website and app, we decided to use their layout for the Celtic Cross. So we're going to do some screen sharing today. We're using Zoom so that we have the opportunity to share these images with you. So let's look at that Labyrinthos spread. Portion of screen. There we go. All right. This is, and I wrote the source down here, Labyrinthos. This is the layout that we used. That is the traditional Celtic cross that you see, those 10 cards, kind of a French cross with a card on top, the line on the right-hand side. There are a lot of questions that it asks and answers. So this gives you a sense of what it is that we were looking at as we grabbed our personal decks and laid out our own cards. That's the assignment. Before we share the actual spreads, Amelia, give us your generic debrief. What is your sense of like actually shuffling the cards and laying them out? Did you dread it? Was it something that became easier to you?
well, okay. So I remember using, I guess we could also talk about like our history with the Celtic Cross a little bit. So, I mean, for me, the first deck that I ever had, that was the spread that was in the Little White Book. My Little White Book didn't even have a like three card option. Although I think I had like read somewhere about a three card like mind, body, spirit situation or whatever. That was the spread. Like if I was gonna do something beyond a one card something, it was a Celtic Cross. And I actually went back. I peeked at some old journals for another video that we're making. Um, and I saw some of my like Celtic crosses that I had done and stuff. Um, and so like that was, and I kind of phased out of doing that. Once I discovered other spreads, I started using those instead. Because it always kind of felt like there was like weight to the Celtic Cross. Like, and even before sitting down to do this, like I feel this sort of weight put on the Celtic Cross, and I also feel my own like resistance to that weight. That because it feels like it's such a big deal. I don't know if that's just my contrarian nature or, whatever, but it feels like it's kind of like placing importance on this particular spread in this particular layout of cards that I just kind of like was like, ugh, no, I'm too good for that. Or like not even too good for it. Just like I don't know. I want to be different. My Enneagram 4 wants to be different. And I also do remember feeling that sort of like, oh, it is 10 cards. And then when we decided to do this, I was like, it's really only 10 cards. And I do 9 card box spreads
Yeah.
frequently, often. I think the difference though between the 9 card and the Celtic Cross is that, at least the way that I read the 9 card box spread, much like you would read a Lenormand box reading.
Same.
I'm excited to get into, I cannot remember her name, like her actual name. She's like the Sibyl's Tarot or something like that on Instagram. She just came out with the book Tableau Revolution back in October, which is about the nine card tableau. I'm excited to read her book and I'm excited to see like what her in-depth analysis of it is. But like I read a nine card box spread like you would read a Lenormand spread. So there aren't specific positions necessarily. Like the center card and the top left card hold a little bit of weight, but other than that, it's kind of like it's very fluid. And it's like, what's the picture that's going on here with these nine cards together, as opposed to this position is this. And it feels like you're kind of like going through a whole like experience like 10 different experiences as you work through this spread. So I was admittedly kind of like dreading having to do that. I don't I have a hard time because I feel like it's like asking me to slow down, and like really focus on one card at a time instead of kind of seeing overall patterns in the spread itself. Um, and I
Can I
have
ask quickly, do you lay face up or face down?
I lay face up. I've never laid
Okay.
face down.
Okay.
I don't know why. I just have never done that. To my memory, at least current Amelia does not ever lay face down. I'll say that. Maybe there was like a past Amelia that did that. Um, no, but I remember the reason why I don't do big positioned spreads like this is because there's a tendency for my brain to get a little lost in the weeds of these spreads. Thinking about like the present situation and the Four of Cups or whatever comes up for that, like really kind of like spinning my wheels a little bit on one card instead of like being able to pull back and look at a bigger picture. And so I was kind of, I was dreading it a little bit. Like I didn't want to do it.
I
What about you? What were your like thoughts as you were moving into this?
Yeah, I share your, I mean, we chose this because we share a kind of resistance to this, but this did make me figure out or sort of drill down on what it is that that resistance is about. In part, and I think I've shared on the channel that my first deck was the Paulina Tarot, and that little white book, that damn little white book that had me the same day that I had it sitting on my floor, shuffling in reversals and laying out a Celtic Cross. It's so bananas. The teacher in me looks back at that and thinks like, what a terrible idea. That is a terrible way. If you are teaching a person who needs the little white book as their kind of anchor, it seems like bananas to me to start with the Celtic Cross. So like the kind of pedantic person in me is like naughty, naughty, and I don't want to do the Celtic Cross just for that reason. But for the same reason, I think that like gets at what you're talking about, it feels heavy and big because it feels like really big separate questions. And it feels like I'm asking a 10 layout spread to do more than a single tarot reading. It feels like several separate tarot readings. So in that way, it kind of feels frustrating to me, or in my imagination, it did. It sort of seemed daunting because I didn't quite understand how to approach the scope of it. Like, what does it mean to ask 10 different questions at the same time? And Robert M. Place, I was reading his book a long time ago, and he said what I hadn't sort of articulated for myself about what I didn't like about big spreads, big positioned spreads, because I too do box spreads and other kinds of layouts that aren't like position one means this and position four means this. And he was saying, like, they are different readings. You're asking each position to answer different questions and putting a single card there. You and I talk about how the magic happens between more than one card. So it kind of it's a little it is not how I traditionally read. I looked back at my own journals as well. There is not a single time since I developed a meaningful journaling practice that I ever did a Celtic crossbred. Like, since I actually deeply journal readings, I would experiment kind of very early in my practice because I was told to do that. Like, it seemed like what serious tarot readers do. But then I realized like serious tarot readers don't have to shuffle in reversals and they can do more modest spreads, and that for some of us, myself included, um, a lot can happen with very few cards. It can be a strength rather than a weakness to really do a deep dive into certain cards. So we'll kind of share as we talk through our actual spreads, the visuals of our spreads, how we anticipate our relationship to this spread changing in the future. But that's what the baggage I brought with me to the Celtic Cross.
Tell me if you also feel this. I feel, and maybe I'm making this up in my head. Maybe I've seen like, but I feel like there is a discourse around the Celtic Cross that it's like, oh, it's the Celtic Cross. Like, and there, I know some diehard, like old school tarot readers. Like, I met this old witch one time. I say old, that's so disrespectful, but she's an elderly woman. I met this elderly witch one time who was like, it was either gonna be three cards or it was going to be the Celtic Cross. And like, that's it. And I was like, okay, I love that for you. Um, so, but I feel like in like modern conversation, it feels like it's like the Celtic Cross. Like, I don't know. Do you feel that too? Am I making that up?
N-
Maybe that's
I
just
don't think
me.
you're making that up. I don't really hear, I think that we find our tribes in this community. So the places that I go, like idea discourse places, I don't notice people really talking about it. There seems to be an enjoyment of or enthusiasm for like novelly long spreads, like interesting layouts that are themed for the season and stuff. And I love them, right? Like the new moon spread, like new moon in Capricorn or whatever. So I see big layouts in that way, but very few references among, I'll say, our generation of tarot readers, whatever that means. People we are different ages. Curious to know in the chat what you think about, or in comments, what you think our generation is. But in our general generation of tarot, I don't see a lot of discussion of the Celtic Cross. I see a lot of people, though, that I really respect. Like the tradition of tarot that I respect does seem to hold it in pride of place. And I have to say, I remember watching Truth and Story, Kelly Fitzgerald's incredible channel, ages ago, and her saying on the channel that for years as a practicing professional reader, that was the only spread she did for people. Like, blew my mind. Really, I mean, wow. I heard her say that. I thought like I didn't, because if you watch Kelly's channel, you know that she believes that tarot can answer lots of different kinds of questions. And that clearly advanced the thesis that the Celtic Cross can answer every type of question. That is not generally how I understood it. So I actually appreciated being challenged in that way. But that video didn't have her walking us through her version of the Celtic Cross. I would have been open to that though. But I hadn't before this truly sat with like, is there a way for me to do this spread and make it my own? I have to say that. Like ever since I've been confident in tarot, that isn't work that I've done. So let's, if you're up for it, let's share some cards and kind of walk through what our general experience was, but actually looking at the spread themselves. Let's see. Can you see the screen?
Mhm.
All right. This is my spread. I use the Rosetta Tarot, which is trimmed. And I can share the names of the cards for folks who may not know the names of these cards. We have the card at the very bottom that I think, what is this called? This is called
The
the
present.
present situation. Yes, our present situation is the Five of Swords down there, defeat. The cross on top of that is the Four of Swords, truce. Past, Three of Swords, sorrow. This is future, right? This position,
Yeah.
lust or strength. This is conscious. That's the Chariot in Rosetta. This is
Unconscious.
subconscious,
Yeah. The subconscious or the
unconscious,
unconscious.
Ace of Cups, Knight of Wands down here, Seven of Wands, futil or Seven of Swords, futility, Nine of Cups, happiness, and Eight of Cups, indolence. So this is what my spread looked like. And I too lay cards face up. And I also, before I start an interpretation of a big spread, whatever big spread I do, will sit down and my very ordered brain wants to know how many majors there were, how many courts, how many, how many minors of what suits. So I did that reflection and just did an overall visual like, do I dread this spread? Like, does this excite me? That lust card stood out to me. I think that's a beautiful card. This not looking great. I did not love to see the three of swords. So that was what I faced before I sat down and started doing the journaling and the interpreting. Should we take a quick look at your spread to see what the overall visual impression is?
Sure, sure.
All right, you have us using the Morgan Greer Tarot, is that right?
Correct.
All right, walk us through it.
Okay, so for my present situation card, I pulled the Ace of Swords. For the problem, crossing it on top, we have the Page of Cups. In the past, we have the Six of Coins. In the future, we have the Three of Swords, which I notice we share. Conscious is Five of Swords. Subconscious or unconscious is the Five of Coins. So a little bit of a like a mirroring there of each other. Over down at the bottom of the staff, we have the Four of Swords for my influence or your influence. The external influence is the Two of Coins. The hopes and fears are or is the Queen of Cups, and the outcome is the Nine of Swords.
We share the three, four, and five of swords. I'm realizing. I
Wow.
don't know what that means.
I know what that means
That
either.
is a power trio. A power trio. If you use the Thoth tradition, that's sorrow, truce, and defeat. What a set.
Gee,
Um, yeah, it seems like something to sit with that we both, out of 78 cards, had those repeats. So
I like
let me look at
you.
my journal.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
I like you. I also sat down and did the like, okay, what's the big picture here? What are my stats? Realized pretty quickly that I did not get any majors, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. Nor did I get any wands, which I love to see a wand. I am a fiery lady. I like I like it when I've got some fire in a spread. There is none of that here. And half of my cards are swords. So I got five swords, three pentacles, and two cups, both of which are court cards. So I was thinking about like how air was really dominating this spread as a whole, and Earth was kind of like permeating it, like seeping through in corners and bits and places. Um,
Yeah.
I was like, and as soon as, here's an interesting thing. I don't know if this speaks to, because I don't remember having this experience when I would lay out Celtic crosses prior. Um, But as soon as I laid out these, because and perhaps it was because when I would use the Celtic Cross, I was not that experienced with reading, and I would lay out cards and I'd go, I don't know what the frick any of these mean. And it was, a challenge to work through it all. But as soon as I laid out these cards, I knew exactly, and we'll talk about the questions that we asked, but I knew exactly what it was saying before I did my analysis. And I also
Mhm.
knew I was being read for filth. And I was like, this is not fair.
And then you texted me.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that, you know, you don't have to know a lot about any spread to know that last card packs a punch, whatever it is. There's something that you're meant to walk away with. That nine of swords, man, like you are, that's a lot. That's a lot. We're starting with the ace of swords and going to the nine of swords. Here's my spread again, and I didn't mention when I was talking through in my mind my stats, there's no earth. The only wands card and the only court card is the Knight of Wands down here. I like mostly felt good. I think I looked and I mostly felt like, ooh, I love the energy of lust and of the chariot. Like I'm feeling this energy. So I can say that my question, and we will share our questions and generalities because this got deep, people. I don't know what I expected, but like journaling for an hour. I am going to start a podcast. And so I wanted to know, what do I need to know about this moment as I am like in this moment of creation and preparation? Um, this identified, it felt very diagnostic. It was like you're asking right now because like you've hit a little bit of a roadblock. My dog, I've followed everyone with the drama. I've shared the drama of my dog having a long-term illness, and he had a seizure episode, a few seizure episodes in short order about a week and a half ago, and that slowed me down. It like derailed my nervous system and my attention. So I felt seen. And I've always enjoyed this about tarot, even when the cards, like Five of Swords, not great. Like I can share the card here just so you can actually see it. I like the colors of this card, but it's Lord of Defeat. That's not exactly something that you want to see. This doesn't, I don't find it foreboding though, because it's kind of telling me what I already know and acts as an affirmation that like we're speaking to each other right now, me and the cards. Uh, the past wasn't feeling very inspired, was feeling a little down. Correct? Yes, sir. And this lust for the future, we love to see it. I love this. Like, energy is coming. You're charged. You're passionate. Like, who doesn't want to be that woman when you're thinking about creating something? Like, call me Babylon. I'm here for it. This chariot, I'm here to embrace the conscious drive of that. I think it's interesting and important that it's a water card. It's Cancer, and it can be easy to forget that the chariot is a water card. And the subconscious pointing out my tender feelings. Like I still have some kind of tenderness down here. I need to be a little gentle with myself in balance with that chariot. That was a good note to pay attention. I noticed as I got to the staff, I found this to be where I was really slowing down. And I also was really thankful. Um, we talked about the decks we were going to choose for this. So we just agreed, let's choose decks that are in foundational traditions, so that are familiar, sort of not like weird and wacky and interesting decks, but decks that we're fluent with and that will be legible to folks who know and love tarot. I was so glad in this moment that I chose not just a deck that I'm fluent with, but a deck that has the esoteric layered on top of it because it's hard for me to have a single card for some of these big questions and having the layering of like, oh, remember this is Fire of Fire, or that right here with the Seven of Swords, that's the moon in Aquarius. It gave me other stuff to reach for when I felt like I don't know what to do with futility. Like Seven of Swords, what is this position? This is external influence. I don't
Hmm.
know. I needed a minute to sit with Seven of Swords in, or not interference, futility as external influence. And it was helpful to think through, okay, Moon, Aquarius, that's the high priestess in the star. Like, the original title of that card it's not futility. What is it? I forget what the original esoteric title is of that, but like it was all extremely helpful, unstable effort. So I appreciated the Golden Dawn in that moment. Um, I didn't love to end on this Eight of Cups. That's something I really sat with. I almost pulled an extra card to clarify, but I felt like that would be cheating. That would be like not doing the assignment. So I really sat with that to figure out, is this telling me like what I don't want to hear, which is you're going to lose steam. Like you're going to be bored. You're going to abandon this project before you even see its fulfillment. But I decided to take this as a heads up that it's easy to lose steam. Like it's easy to get distracted and not to let that happen. And we talk about whether, tarot reading is a foregone conclusion or whether it can be informative and insight driven. So this felt good for that.
So I also struggled. Hold on, I have some questions for you. I also
Oh yeah,
struggled
yeah,
with
yeah.
the staff.
Yes.
Um, I don't know what it is. It's like that cross in the over on the left is so, I don't know. There's something about that that feels so, I mean, you and I, okay, I'm gonna finish the sentence, I promise. You and I also share a love of, in addition to like a nine card spread, a good French cross.
Yes.
And there's something about this side of the Celtic cross that feels like a French
Yes.
cross. Like it is, we generally don't have like the blocking card over the central
Yes.
card, but like I read with a French cross quite frequently. I don't necessarily have assigned positions. I keep it pretty fluid for the most part. Um, but there, like, all of that kind of makes sense just positionally. Like,
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
left, we're moving toward the past. On the right, we're moving toward the future.
Yeah.
Of course, our conscious is going to be up, and our unconscious is going to be below, and we're at the heart and the center of all of this. Like, all of that makes sense just when you look at it. The positions on the staff feel entirely made up. It's like we've got to go somewhere with this information, so this is where we're gonna go with it. But yeah, I also struggled with it. I don't know if it's like seeing them in a line like that, they feel so separate and they feel like they're not really interacting with anything else around them. But tell me about your experience just trying to figure that side out.
I do not love the visual layout, and I think it's in part because I really like the French cross, and I feel like it does a lot. I would have preferred to do the French cross or the five card version of the, is that five? The six card version of the French cross, and then set those cards aside and lay out four cards. But looking at them next to each other, I think it implies a kind of conversation happening between these two parts of the spread that is not intuitively happening for me. I think there's a reason they're separated. Like there are two different things happening, two different kind of energetic registers. Um, and it seems unhelpful. My like eminently swords practical self is like it's critically unhelpful to see these things next to each other. So I don't like I just don't love that element of the Celtic cross, and we see that in every Celtic cross spread. Like this is the way that the layout looks. And I think in part two, I just don't love these positions. And I think that we can kind of pick some of this up from this, right? So we have what here? Our influence. Well, in my mind, we can kind of we can get to that in that five swords, four of swords over it. Like there, I think there's something to interpret there. External influence. I sometimes read the top card that way. Like what is external, what's pressing down. Like, so in some ways, this feels superfluous. Um, and I also just don't, the nature of this spread, which is like, what's going to happen? That feels like the question, like, what's going to happen? Not just what do you need to know, but where's all this going? Um, I just don't love it. I think I just don't like the staff. I don't like the staff. And I should say that one thing I really struggled with, and I wonder if you struggled with the same, was how to even form a question. Like, this is a big table of cards. It's 10 cards that answers lots of questions. Like, it feels too small to say like how can I strategize my day better? Like that doesn't seem like a question for the Celtic Cross. But tell me the story of my forthcoming podcast. That feels really big. Like how do I even frame a question for this kind of spread? I was challenged by that. And I think that challenge is mostly tied up in the staff. So, yeah, I don't love it. I kind of want to I kind of want to erase it. And yet I understand the value of it. And this is where the gold is, right? This is where it's all we're all leading here. This road
Well,
up to the top. So let's like take a look. Yeah, go ahead.
no, well, it's just some like expanded thoughts there is when
Yeah.
I like got to the staff, because I had been, I agree. It feels like you're doing a lot of that work that the positions of the staff are. in that actually the cross portion.
Yeah.
Um, and so by the time I got to the staff, what I wanted, which is my natural inclination, and this is how I read for myself, this is how I read for others. If I'm doing a big investigative tarot reading, I am first going to do the layer of, okay, the first layer of the reading is going to be, let's find out more about the situation itself. Let's find out what's going on, where are you, where is it, like, how is your mind playing into all of this? How are you acting within this situation? How are the people around you acting within this situation? Which I agree, I feel like is all answered in the cross. And by the time I got over to that staff, I wanted to do what my normal layer two, which was like, okay, now that I am armed with all of that information, give me some steps, give me some things that I can do, tarot.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's what I kept wanting the like your influence and external influence, those first two cards on the bottom of the staff to be like, okay, how can I influence myself and how can I influ but that's not at all what the positions are. And so I kept butting up against that. Like the hopes and fears wasn't difficult to interpret because again, but I feel like we've already answered that with the unconscious position
Yes.
on the cross. And then like outcome, okay, I can actually get behind an outcome card because it's like I mean, like you said, yours is a warning. It's like if you keep heading down this path, this is probably what's going to happen, sort of situation. Um, but I like kept wanting to take that staff as like, okay, now this is my staff that I'm going to pick up and like carry with me through this situation that I'm asking about. And it's like, no, we're just gonna go back and like rehash some things. It was frustrating.
Can you give us a very topical generality of the nature of your reading? Were you reading for career? Were you reading for interpersonal
Yeah,
relationships?
so the question I didn't really know what to read for because I like you was like I don't know how to ask a question of this spread.
Yeah.
Especially the positions it feels like and I think this is why I eventually kind of started turning to other spreads. Like I remember when I discovered like Ethany's spreads that she has. I was like, "Oh, a whole world has opened up for me now." It feels like this spread was answers a specific type of question. And it's like not one that
Yes.
I can even put my finger on because I don't think it's like, oh, this is a spread that's just for love or this is a spread that's just for career. It feels like it is for like when you want a very specific type of answer. And it's not necessarily an answer that I'm generally inclined to want at any given time.
Hmm. What an interesting way to think about that. Is so what became clear to me is it felt like the question it's answering is what's going on generally. Just like what we're going to name a situation, I'm going to tell you the parts of it, what's happening. But that only became clear to me after I'd done the spread. Is that your sense of the question that's being answered?
Yes. And I think again, that's just, I mean, to my point earlier, like I tend to be very like action oriented with my reading. For me it is not like I read to understand, but I also read to know what the F to do. Like okay, tell me what to do cards or give me some ideas. Like I go to cards when I'm out of ideas. Um and this does not answer that. Like it can, and I found a way through to answer that question, but that's not like baked into the spread. Um,
Mhm.
the like the bones and like the actual spread itself is here's the situation and here's what's going to happen. Um, and yeah, so I asked the question. I did not know what to ask. And there wasn't anything that was immediately coming to mind. And so I asked the question, what am I blind to right now? Which was a terrible question to ask, especially for a spread that I was going to talk about on a video. Because, of course, it got very personal. I was like, okay, cool. Um, and which I also kind of wanted to ask a more open-ended question like, okay, I generally do not come to tarot with open-ended questions, and I advise clients and people that I read for generally not to come with an open, what do I need to know right now? Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just like that is the type of question that's like you better be prepared for any kind of answer,
Mhm.
And I don't know about anybody else, but I'm not prepared for any kind of answer. But I was curious how this spread could handle an open-ended question like that. And as soon as I laid out the cards and like pulled back and got an overall idea, like just looking at them all and seeing what was on the table, I immediately knew what it was speaking about. Um, that the page and Queen of Cups, especially. Like them being the court cards, they were both in the family of cups. You have one person who's in a more um like a position of
Yeah.
power over that page. And then the page is the card on the side. I was like, "Oh, hello." I'd like for me it was speaking and I'm gonna like try my best to navigate through this. It was speaking to like a recent conflict that I unwillingly became embroiled in, and how that brought up old scripts that have been playing on a loop, like in my head consistently, nonstop since it happened. Which is that page sitting on top of that Ace of Swords, that like clarity being blocked by that page, like the kind of emotional overwhelm that the page can sometimes have. In the past position, and this is where like I really feel like I was bringing in over here on the cross. I felt so comfortable. I was able to bring in a lot of my like fluid reading because the kind of external cards on the cross are so relational to each other, or they relate to each other. So I can read the past and the present almost together, or the past and the future, excuse me, almost together. Like we're moving from a place of give and take, a place of reciprocity, a place of balance into that like that sting, and that it's almost like it's an inability to move past it almost. It's because you got to remove the swords from the heart before we can really like move on. And then the top and the bottom read so much together, especially seeing the fives mirrored with each other. Like in the conscious, we've got the battle itself and like how icky and gross that feels. Nobody likes engage. Like, I mean, I don't like conflict. I have a Libra moon. I want everybody to be happy, including myself, and sometimes to my own detriment. Like, I will seek out that, like, for the sake of the peace.
Yeah.
Let's just not. But like in the unconscious, there were kind of some fears bubbling up of like those old scripts. This is where those old scripts and patterns are coming through. That fear of like, okay, is this going to be a separation? Like, is that what this conflict is going to cause? Um, as it has in the past. What, so like again, that cross, it was so I was able to read it like in a way where the cards were speaking to each other instead of kind of standing on an island by themselves. And then I got over to the staff and I was like, well, shoot. Like they were just flow. I was flowing with that cross so nicely. And then over there, I again, and I kept wanting to like shoehorn those cards into something that the spread wasn't letting me
Yeah.
do. Um, so I was able to finally I had to walk away for a little while. I was like, I'm gonna go walk away. I'm gonna watch a little bit of, because it was like at night, so my family was asleep. I was like, I'm gonna watch like some TV or something. And I was rolling it over in my head and I was like, oh, okay, I think I got it. And like ran and got my journal. But yeah, we're talking about, so I tried to and that's another thing is I was trying to read those like my influence and the external influence like I was reading over there on the cross where it's like, okay, these are two sides of the same coin. These are working together. I wasn't able to get there with those positions. They felt on their own. They felt like they were doing something really different. Um, I mean that two of coins, I feel like though is speaking back to the six of coins, just in a different where it's like it's a different version of balance where it's a lot more precarious. And anything can tip it over now, right? Because we don't have the stability that the four extra coins provides. Um, I think that Four of Swords is like it either could be, especially seeing that Four of Swords on the bottom of a position where we have a Nine of Swords at the top as the outcome. I think that Four of Swords is kind of my like almost instinctual wanting to go back to like burying my head in the sand and being like, nope, like whatever we can do to keep the peace, let's just do that. Um, Again, to my own detriment because we've got that Nine of Swords at the top. That Queen of Cups, I mean, she is working directly with that of Pentacles there, but also with that Page of Cups, that like wanting a certain type of social like dynamic that like just isn't like almost like an idealized version of a dynamic that just isn't there. Um, and then we've got our Nine of Swords, which is like, well, didn't love that that idea. Especially that's such an interesting Nine of Swords. I love them working Greer. And like you, I was really grateful to be doing this with a deck that I had fluency with that I didn't have to. I thought about doing this with the Ashira Tarot, which is a deck I love, but it is a deck that I was worried about getting really overwhelmed
Sure.
from having all of those cards on the table. Um, and so I just didn't really want to mess with any of that. So I went with a good old Morgan Greer, but that Nine of Swords, man, it's like that being bound. That is so different from what we would typically. I had to like do a double take. I was like, are you sure that's not the Eight of Swords? No, it is the Nine of Swords. That being bound is a little bit different from how we normally see the Nine of Swords. Um, and I think, you know, that, and especially being in this position of air, we have such a dynamic of earth, such a like groundedness. This is really happening, and
Mhm.
an overwhelming amount of air of like the those thought patterns and that playing things on a loop. Like that is where that Nine of Swords sits, is in that realm of what's happening up here. Not necessarily how the external is affected by this, but how my internal situation is affected by all of this. And right now, or when I laid out these cards as it stood, it was like, I mean, this is what you're going to be stuck in. And you are going to keep replaying those old scripts, and you are going to be having arguments in the shower, and you are going to be thinking about this that just happened and then the past, like it's going to keep converging and working against you, if something doesn't change. I was like,
For all of my complaining about this spread, I got finished. I finished journaling and walked away for like an hour and then went and finished the trailer that I had been working on for the podcast forever. Like that. I think I was like, I have been warned. Like I got a heads up. I heard you cards. And that is the most important test for me for all of my like whining and vacillating about how much the spread does or doesn't work for me. It worked. Like I worked because of the insights I gained. Um, I think I reflect on it and think that there was a more efficient tarot way for me to get there, or a way that I may have enjoyed a little bit more because I actually enjoy journaling with the cards, even when they are more difficult messages. Like I wouldn't have had to wrestle as much, but the fact of the matter is I wasn't asking questions before that got me to that same point of action. So for that, I'm really grateful. Um, Ultimately, it did help. Like there are two cards that are associated with Saturn. I had two Aquarius cards. Um, that kind of stuff really helped me when I was stuck on like hopes and fears being one card. Like what? I could do a whole 9 card spread on hopes and fears. Um, so yeah, what is your kind of that I think is my final really thoughts on this spread. It brought me to a point of action. Number one and number two, it makes all of the difference when I use a deck that is the right deck for the way that I read. Um, and clearly, I don't know everything quite yet about my practice because I didn't expect this to work at all for me. I thought it was going to be more of an intellectual exercise or a practice exercise that you and I would do and share. I didn't think we were like going places. So, what are your like, how would you sum up this experience? And is it one that you're going to revisit? Are you doing the Celtic Cross next week and the week after?
Well, and I think so. One of the ways I think I kind of was figuring out how to make this my like, okay, how do I bring my style of reading, my stuff into this spread that is really almost feels antithetical to how I read tarot generally. Um, and one of the I kept really leaning into using other positions of the spread to help me to relate back to when I
Yeah.
was trying to figure out a card, or even when I wasn't trying to figure out a card. It felt like these positions really opened up when it was like, okay, but how do my hopes and fears relate to like what's going on? Like how does it relate to the past? How does it relate to what's like my conscious? How does it relate to the unconscious? Like what's going on between this card and how it can kind of pull back in? Um, which I'm not like claiming I'm like, oh, I'm some genius. This like because it really when I used to read with positional spreads like this, it always felt like it was just like this card is this. And
Yeah.
you read that card for that, and then you go to the next card, and this card is for this. And I was trying to not even avoid doing that, but I couldn't do that. Like I couldn't figure out how to make that work. I was like, I don't know what the Four of Swords has to do with my influence on this situation. Like, what are you talking about? So I like was able to kind of break that open for myself by saying, okay, this might be this position, but it's working with all this other stuff going on here. So let's read that too. Um, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. And here's the thing, I got good information out of it. The one thing that I do feel like was missing was like, and maybe this is just me and like I'm a control freak, but I want to know like what can I do? I
No.
like what what is within my control and what can I do? Um, and it's like for me it was like it's great to have this information, but now I kind of want to go like pull some Lenormand cards that'll tell me like what I can do. So for me it was like this was a great starting point spread to like really dig into a situation. That's what I use my box spread for though. And I feel like my box spread, the box spread, that's what I use the box spread for. And so I feel like that serves kind of a similar function. Um, and also has that layer of what can be done, the way that I read it. Um, and so I found myself a little wanting at the end, where I was like, this is great information to have. I think, if like it's one of those things where it's like this is all like you said, this felt like a really like an investigative spread. It's like let's understand the situation. And there's you can work backwards with that. And it's like, okay, if this is the situation and this is how all of this is going to end, okay, what are the points in this situation that need to be changed and adjusted so that I don't get this outcome? Or what do I need to keep doing so that I do get this outcome if it's one that you want? Um, but I think I like a much more direct approach to that type of stuff where I'm not having to like kind of back my way into it.
It seems like, so I agree. The box spread does serve that function for me, the diagnosis plus. Like, and I appreciate that about it. This was a helpful exercise in that it did give me information that I acted upon, but not because it gave me a recommendation that would have been helpful. But like, I got there on my own, so we're good. This was great at reminding me what I do and don't like in a spread. And it sounds like it was the same for you because the spread did exactly what it promised it would do. I think, if nothing else, it seems like for both of us, proof of concept in that we can read these spreads. Like this is not,
It's not
this
scary.
yeah, I mean, it's just 10 cards. We know how to read 10 cards. So it's not that this is difficult to read. It's just like, oh, I just actually prefer spreads that do something different. This was helpful. That was a helpful, you know, bit of information, and realigned the narrative I have about my practice. Like the narrative I have, which was just I don't know. I'm above the Celtic Cross, but like I'm so past the Celtic Cross. I'm so over it. And it's like, no, not really. It's just not, that's not the kind of spread that I prefer to answer the kinds of questions that I ask. And it sounds like about the same thing for you. But man, it was a really good reminder of like sometimes you don't want the action point. Like sometimes you just want a diagnosis. Nothing else. This reminds me of like, when I have to tell my husband, like, I don't need your advice. I just need you to listen. I just need someone to like hear me, right? Like sometimes that's enough, and actually any more than that is too much. Um, I as a thinker am so curious to interview people or talk to people who very regularly use the Celtic Cross for all kinds of questions because I'm not convinced that based on this experience, I know how elastic the Celtic Cross can be. I'm still unclear about how to ask different kinds of questions of this very defined collection of 10 positions. So I'd love to hear from people in comments or look for videos of people's explanations for their own relationship to the Celtic Cross. Those are my final thoughts, though. Do you have anything else before we close out?
Um, Here's my question for you. Do you think you will use it again?
No, not outside of like I want to. I actually genuinely mean that. I want to hear first, I will do it again because I want to try other versions of the Celtic Cross. They're all kind of similar, it seems to me, based on what I found, but there are some meaningful positional differences. Like that top and bottom card. One, two, three, four, five, and six seem to actually be the points that change between people's versions of the Celtic Cross. So I'd love to kind of grab a deck and lay that out and see how the reading might change with just those different positions. It's not that they're somewhere else, it's that they just are understood differently. It's the same way that there are permutations of the French cross, and people's different versions of the French cross. But beyond being kind of curiosity exercise, which is what this is, I don't think so because there are other spreads and practices that I do that fill this need and are more exciting to me. Um, and yet, I know that if I do some more Celtic crosses for fun and for study, that I'm clearly capable of getting some insight from them. So I will approach them with more confidence and more openness, I think, than I was inclined to have, and a different account of like Danielle's practice is this and this, like, I don't know. It's a lot of different things. It can
Yeah,
be
no,
a lot
less
of
of
different things.
a there's less of a ugh when
Yes.
you go to sit down to do it. No, I felt that too. It's like I'm not sure. I might adapt some of that cross position to
Yeah.
how I approach the French cross. Um, and frankly, it's like I feel like the staff could be more useful. Like I feel like there's, if anything, I feel like the journey up the staff should be a journey toward that outcome. And I feel like there's a way to play with those three positions on the staff so that that's what that is. Who was it? I think it was like Tom Benjamin a couple of years ago that was like doing workshops on redoing the Celtic Cross, which I find really exciting. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
let's do it. Um, but I also, you know, I think this is a spread that I don't often sit down and do big, I don't want to say big because I do box spreads all the time, but I don't, this this was a lot more effort than a box spread was. And I
Yes.
don't often sit down to do that type of work for myself regularly. Mostly because I don't have that time mo a lot, but and when I do, I like want to do other stuff. Danielle keeps wanting me to watch Frankenstein, and so like I gotta figure out some way to do that.
Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein.
Yes. Um, but I also feel like I can do the same thing in less time with like less output. Um, and am I being lazy? Probably. Um, I'm
It
efficient.
sounds like you'll do it if you feel like learning something.
Yeah.
But if you're not in the mood to learn, go watch Frankenstein.
And do a box spread instead, or even a French
Right.
cross.
Or do
Um,
a French cross for Frankenstein. We like to do that on this show. That actually would be a lot of fun. I want to grab one of those decks. I made a video for folks who don't know about three decks for Frankenstein for the movie. And I kind of want to grab those decks and do some spreads for the different characters of the movie. I wonder how I would feel about that.
do a French cross for every single one of them.
That sounds
Or
so fun.
a Celtic cross. No, I'm sorry, do a Celtic cross for all of them.
That sounds less fun.
It's like four less cards, but or four or five less cards, but it's still, I don't know. There's something
Meaningful.
about it.
I was reading a version of the French cross, and then we'll wrap up, people. But I learned a version of the French cross from a French cartomancy reader, a Baleen reader actually, who does the French cross plus cards 6 and 7 on the side. So there's no cross card in the French cross. There are just the five, like north, south, east, and west card in the middle. And then he does cards 6 and 7 kind of stepped off to the corner. I totally bought into that. I don't read it that way, but I enjoyed that. And but it doesn't seem daunting to, it's not a whole staff. It's not it's clearly like here's a little extra. Here's a little something. It felt like how some folks will bring in an Oracle card at the end. And yet it's almost as many cards as a Celtic cross. That's so fascinating.
I think it's because, I mean, and maybe correct me if you don't feel this way, but I feel like when I'm reading a French cross, like I am reading it all together and I'm not dissecting each part of it. I'm saying, how does this card on the left work with and against this card on the right? Like, is there tension there? Are they pushing against each other? Are they pulling away from each other? I'm also usually reading directionally when I read, like, and so, like, what are the poles? What are the points of attraction? So I feel like I'm reading everything as a whole, like in conversation with each other instead of trying to dissect every little bit. And with a spread like this, like if that's what it's asking you to do, is like to dice. I found a way to get into that like relational sort of reading, but at the same time, it still said, no, read this card as
Yeah.
hopes and dreams or hopes and fears. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, let's do it. So it is. I mean, to Robert and Place's point, it's 10 questions.
It is. All
Uh,
right, our question for the collective today is Amelia and I discovered that we needed to challenge our own narratives of our practice. We had an account of our practice as readers and discovered like we may not be understanding and telling the full story of how tarot works. So, how is it that we collectively should think about challenging or reconsidering the stories that we have about how tarot works? Is that about the question that
yeah, or
we've been
like
thinking?
like what are we closing ourselves off to?
I like it. All right. I'm using the same deck, the trimmed Rosetta, are you using Morgan Greer. I hate those card backs. I love Morgan Greer. I loathe those card backs.
I love them. They're my favorite. And I love that the stretch tarot card backs are like
I
an homage to
hate that.
much. I
That
love
is
it
the
so much. You know
only
what
thing I
this
hate about that.
feels? This feels like kind of medieval folk art, sort of, but like the 70s version, which the 70s were like kind of like medieval revival sort of stuff. And I love it so, 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 so much.
The old Morgan Greer that I haven't used, like my old, so now I don't have a vintage one, but it gets so buttery. There's something special about that cardstock. There's something really kind of
Yeah,
delicious
it's
and
like
buttery about
US
it.
Games never decided to change the card stock on this deck. Okay,
All
let's
right,
see.
my card is the Six of Cups Pleasure.
I got the Knight of Pentacles. That's my Deacon card.
Look at that.
Show me your Six of Cups again.
Yeah, here it is.
Okay. Look at all those, that yellow. There's a lot of yellow in
Yeah.
it.
You know, this is a Scorpio card. Scorpio is associated with death in the tarot. I always like that.
Death. Death is a pleasure.
Dun dun dun.
Ooh.
You said Knight of
Pentacles.
Pentacles. Knight of Pentacles. Okay.
He is armored, man. He's like, there's some stoicism to him.
There seems to be something here. Tell me if you're seeing something about this because he's stoic and serious and responsible and applied. And this is like let's talk about pleasure. Let's
Well,
talk about what
he's
makes us happy. Let's indulge.
he's so unmoving. Like, he's got like his big pentacle up front and he's all covered in his very stiff armor and he's got his staff out front. Like he is so unmoving. And the water in that card alone, and then even all like the vines and the stuff, there is so much movement in that card. Like there's so much like there's life, you know?
It feels like it's saying that actually doing stuff that isn't a part of our routine serious practice can be kind of fun and pleasurable. It seems like an invitation for that guy to have some fun, and
Yeah.
that some of this stuff can be more fun than we may have understood it to be.
When I like that word routine that you said there, I think we can, like, it's so easy to do your, like, a lot of people have a routine. I'm not very good at routines, but I still have my, like, stuff that I circle back to. I love my box spread, my, like, three cards, what have you. And when I sit down to do cards, it's so easy to just do the same thing that you're used to doing, or if you're a person who's got like a card a day practice, a card, you do the same weekly spread or whatever. It's so easy to do that. Or it's so easy to just keep going back to that. And I feel like this is saying like don't like stop doing that or just try it. And go a little crazy. Have a
I
little
like
fun with it. Yeah.
I love it. And instead of the Celtic Cross people, we're giving you actionable information in
Well,
this
and like
reading.
ask yourself the questions, like examine your routines, the things that you always go back to, and ask yourself, do I enjoy this? Is this fun for me? Does this like give me anything, or is this just what I'm used to doing? I think that's the question.
It was fun to do something different. I like that. I like that. All right, take us home.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. We'll include a link to the Labyrinthos page on this spread because they go into some detail, like explaining it a
They
little
do.
bit too. But let us know in the comments below, do you like the Celtic Cross? Do you use it? Tell us how you use it. Or are you like us and are like, not so sure? Tell us your thoughts about the Celtic Cross. And we'll, of course, include all relevant information as well as where you can find us elsewhere on the internet, including our website, and where you can book us for a reading and where you can purchase learning intensives from us. And until next time, friends, we will see you in the lab.
Bye.